You want to know about me? All right, let me take you back to when I was just a kid. We didn't have much back then. My parents worked their asses off just to put food on the table. But even with money being so tight, they saved up to buy me this beautiful blue coat for my 10th birthday. I'll never forget opening that box and pulling out the silkiest, richest blue fabric I'd ever seen. My eyes went wide as saucers. Is this really for me? I gasped. My mum smiled that warm smile of hers. Of course it is, sweetie. We know how much you wanted a nice winter coat. I hugged that coat tight, burying my face in the soft material. In that moment I felt like the luckiest girl in the whole world. I must have worn that beautiful blue coat every single day after that. It kept me so toasty warm, even on the coldest winter days. I loved twirling around, watching it billow out behind me. To a kid who had so little, that coat made me feel like $1,000,000. One frosty morning I was making my way to school, coat zipped up tight, when I noticed 3 girls up ahead. Tiffany, the leader of their little pack, spotted me and her face contorted into a sneer. Well, if it isn't little Miss Fancy Coat, she jeered. The other 2 girls, Brittany and Ashley, snickered like idiots at her lame joke. They sauntered over, looking me up and down with cruel eyes. Where'd you get those fancy threads? Tiffany demanded, grabbing a fistful of the soft blue fabric. Does your mummy work on the street corner? My face flushed hot with anger and embarrassment. Let go, I shouted, trying to yank my coat free from her clawed grasp. Tiffany didn't let go. In fact, she tightened her grip, her lacquered nails digging into the material. I don't think so, Coatie, she sneered. We're going to hold on to this little number. I tried to pull away again, but Brittany and Ashley flanked me, grabbing handfuls of the coat as well. Let me go, I cried, panic rising in my throat. This couldn't be happening. Not to my beautiful coat. The girls just cackled and started playing a sick game of tug-of-war with me in the middle. I was practically lifted off my feet as they pulled viciously. Leave her alone. We all turned to see Susie Ellison, a tiny mouse of a girl, shouting at us from the sidewalk. For a second, the bullies looked shocked that someone had the audacity to talk back to them. Then Tiffany's face contorted in rage. Mind your own business, loser, she spat, giving my coat another vicious yank. I wish I could say that Susie's intervention helped, but it only seemed to enrage the bullies more. Tiffany nodded at her goons and they renewed their efforts, pulling at my coat with violent tugs. No, stop, I screamed, tears streaming down my face as I felt the fibers starting to tear. But they didn't stop, keeping up the relentless tug of war. I could hear the ripping sounds, like nails on a chalkboard. My stomach dropped as I watched small holes form in the soft blue fabric under the cruel assault. Please, it was a gift, I sobbed desperately. My parents saved up everything for this coat. For a beat, Tiffany almost looked like she might reconsider. But then her face hardened. Should have thought of that before you tried to go all Hollywood on us, she hissed. With a savage double yank from her and her cronies, there was a horrible rending sound as the back split wide open. Stuffing burst out as if the coat was bleeding its lifeblood. I stood there, stunned, as the girls released their grip and my ruined coat slipped off my shoulders onto the cold concrete. Hot tears blurred my vision, but I could still make out the irreparable damage, long gashes across the back, stuffing spilling out, and the luxurious blue fabric now dull and tattered. Tiffany smirked triumphantly. There, now it looks like something a charity case would wear. The 3 of them collapsed into peals of cruel laughter. I wanted to say something, anything to wipe those smug looks off their faces, but a lump of anguish clogged my throat. As their laughter faded down the sidewalk, I slowly bent down and gathered up the tattered remains of my beloved coat. Shards of cold seemed to pierce my skin as the winter air hit my arms, but that was nothing compared to the hollowness spreading through my chest. Somehow I made it home, trudging through the bitter cold while clutching the ruined coat to my body. By the time I opened the front door, my face was frozen with dried tear tracks. Sweetie, my mum froze when she saw the state I was in, the destroyed coat hanging limply in my arms. Oh, honey, what What happened? I couldn't hold it in any longer. The second my mom wrapped her arms around me, the floodgates opened. Racking sobs tore from my chest as I clung to her, the ruined coat still clutched desperately in my fists. Those girls. They ruined it, I wailed. My beautiful sea coat. Mum just held me tighter, gently shushing me while running her hands over my hair. Dad must have heard the commotion, because he soon appeared, his face falling when he saw the state we were in. What's this about girls? What happened, Pumpkin? He asked, his usual jovial tone replaced with steely concern. Through hiccuping breaths, I haltingly explained about the bullies cornering me, grabbing at my coat, playing tug-of-war until the material shredded beyond repair. With each word, I could see the outrage and devastation etching itself onto my parents' faces. When I finally fell silent, Mum cupped my blotchy cheek, her eyes shining with unshed tears. Oh, sweetie, that coat was so special to you. We worked overtime for months to save up enough to get it. Dad's jaw ticked, his fists clenching. For once, his typical Joker demeanor was nowhere to be seen. Those little punks had no right at all. I nodded miserably, fresh tears leaking out. As good as my parents' intentions were, their comfort couldn't slice through the hollow ache in my chest. Not when my most cherished possession was lying in tattered ruins. In the days after the coat incident, a burning ember of rage slowly ignited within me. At first, the sadness and hurt were all-consuming, but as the shock faded, anger took its place. How could those girls be so cruel, so wantonly destructive? And for what? Because they were jealous I had something nice. A bubbling cauldron of bitterness brewed inside me every time I replayed the vicious tug-of-war over the coat in my mind. My parents did their best to console me, taking me shopping to find a new winter coat. But it wasn't the same. None of them held the same specialness, the same meaning, as the blue one they had lovingly saved up for. Increasingly, my thoughts turned to vengeance. Those girls needed to be taught a lesson. They needed to feel even a fraction of the devastation they had inflicted on me. I started watching them more closely at school, keeping my distance but observing their movements, their routines, their friends. I noticed Tiffany's predictable morning stop at the cafeteria to buy a designer coffee and gigantic cinnamon bun. I saw how Brittany obsessively checked her hair and makeup between every class. And Ashley. Well, she picked her nose more than any human being probably should. A seed of a plan took root in my mind. If I timed things just right, sutured the details perfectly, I could make their lives a living hell without them ever realizing it was me behind it all. An ember of dark satisfaction burned inside me at the thought of them suffering, just like I had. With my observations complete, it was time to set my intricate revenge plan into motion. I made sure to cover my tracks at every turn, changing my handwriting, using burner emails and pay-as-you-go phones. No way was I getting caught before I could make those witches pay. For Tiffany, I started small but petty. Each morning I snuck an excess of salt and baking soda into her ridiculously overpriced coffee order, ensuring it was practically undrinkable. Her dramatic gagging and sputtering brought me no small amount of satisfaction. With Brittany's locker combination cracked, it was easy to rig a small explosive device made from common household chemicals. When she opened her locker door between third and fourth period, a tiny blast showered her in smashed chocolate pudding cups, ruining her pristine makeup and hair she spent so much time fawning over. Ashley's dose of karma was probably the most revolting. For weeks, I planted cruel rumors around the school about her. Nasal habits. Soon, whispers and finger-pointing followed her everywhere. No one wanted to go near her for fear of catching whatever nastiness she seemed to be suffering from. As each phase of my plan progressed, I could see the misery mounting for the three bullies. The satisfaction crested every time I caught sight of them having an awful day, hair disheveled, makeup smeared, faces crumpled in humiliation or disgust. Finally, they knew how it felt to have something they cared about ruined. But it wasn't enough. Not yet. My anger burned just as hot as ever, demanding more recompense. With each successful strike against the bullies, my appetite for revenge only grew. Simply humiliating them in petty ways wasn't cutting it anymore. I wanted them utterly broken, just like they had broken me that fateful winter day. My schemes took a more pernicious turn. I got a hold of Tiffany's social media logins and began insidiously leaking her most embarrassing and intimate secrets online, rupturing her carefully curated social media presence. Using proxy servers to mask my trail, I flooded Brittany's inbox and DMs with aggressive, X-rated spam messages and distressing photoshopped images. Her parents ended up taking away all her devices amidst escalating panic attacks. For Ashley, I exposed her most humiliating struggles with personal hygiene by mailing out printed manifestos to everyone at school detailing her issues in cringeworthy detail. She became a total pariah, eating alone under the bleachers every lunch period. With each devastating blow I landed, the balance of power drastically shifted. Where they once sauntered the halls like royalty, now the trio could hardly show their faces without getting pelted by jeers, revulsion, and cyberbullying from all angles. Watching their gradual descent into social purgatory was better than I could have imagined. An electric thrill ran through me with every public meltdown, every desperate plea for mercy, every huddled crying session. This was justice. Plain and simple. They were the bullies now, and I was the one holding the flaming sword. As the school year bled into summer, the weight finally started to lift off my shoulders. The intricate web of revenge I had spun slowly unwound, leaving the 3 bullies as empty, withered husks of their former selves. I'll never forget the last time I saw them before that final summer break. Tiffany, Brittany, and Ashley were holed up under the old oak tree, surrounded by a force field of cruelty and disdain from their peers. Tiffany's voice hitched with sobs as she spat venomous curses at anyone who walked too close. Brittany had her head down, shoulders shaking with misery. Even Ashley, for once, wasn't digging for gold. A part of me felt a flicker of regret as I watched them, broken down into shells of anxiety and self-loathing. But a larger part felt an overwhelming sense of closure and relief. The anger that had burned me up inside for so long finally began to cool into stillness. As I turned and walked away from their pathetic tableau, the lingering anguish over my beloved coat seemed to dissipate entirely. All that mattered was the knowledge that the pain had passed, and I would never again be a victim. From there I resolved to embrace a new philosophy of radical compassion both for others and for myself. The coat and those traumatic events would be locked away as a relic from my past that no longer had any power over me. When the next school year arrived, I was myself again, smiling, confident, anchored in my own self-worth. If Tiffany, Brittany, or Ashley dared to cross my path, I paid them no mind whatsoever. They were ghosts, fading shadows utterly insignificant to the bright path that lay ahead of me.